I'm Scott Goldman, and this is the Grammy Museum's Programs at Home. Our guest today has established herself as one of the most innovative artists, performers, producers, and directors of her generation. Her 2019 album, Magdalene, landed on many best-of lists, and the video for her song Cellophane earned a Grammy nomination. She's here today following the recent release of a short film based on her song, Sad Day. FKA Twigs, thanks so much for being with us today.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, how are you?
Yeah, man, I'm good.
So, it seems over the last however many months, I start these conversations by talking about quarantine. And I know that you have so many different creative outlets. I'm wondering if, kind of the isolation has given you a chance to dive deeper into one or the other.
That's really interesting. I think in the beginning of the quarantine, I was struggling a little bit to find my rhythm because I love to train, I love to go to dance studios, I love to meet up with my collaborators and really have that sort of like one-on-one creative, like fun experience. And obviously that wasn't able to happen. But I ended up, in actual fact, making a whole album in quarantine. And I just decided one day, like it was kind of maybe like 1/3 of the way through, and I just said, you know what, like I'm just gonna make an album. And I just went and did it. And it was really amazing because I worked predominantly with an amazing artist and producer called Alguincho. And I did the whole thing with pretty much all of the collaborators over FaceTime. So I was working with people that I'd never met in real life, and we were doing the whole thing over FaceTime. And it was great because sort of I couldn't go in the studio at the beginning of it. So I was like getting beats and having to work from MP3s. And then I would like write melodies over the day with Pablo, who's our Guincho. And then in the night, I would call some of my friends in America that make music, and I would just sit and have a glass of wine and chill and write lyrics and like talk about what the song's about on FaceTime with like friends in another country. So I was able to like work through the day and through the night, all on my phone. So I had a really brilliant time. I mean, I think, in some ways, like my physicality, I can say like did suffer a bit just because I wasn't able to like train as much as I usually do. But I think like I started learning the piano. I can read music now ish, which is good. So I learned the piano. I mean,
it sounds like you've been remarkably productive. But let me ask you about that process of working remotely. Because, I've talked to many artists who, while they've been doing it, find that remote experience to be, for lack of a better term, a little awkward. But you seem to have become very comfortable with it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously to be in person is always better, and the result is different when you are in person. But I just think I really embraced it. And I was able to meet and make friends with some amazing writers like Ali Tamposi, and I worked with Billy Walsh as well, who's been a friend for a while, but we've never worked together. But I would just FaceTime Billy, and we would just like talk for like an hour about our lives, and then just like start talking about like lyrics and stuff like that. And I think that I managed to find like a sense of community over the internet, which was unusual, really. Which is unusual for me. I'm not a very like internet-y person, but I guess I just kind of embraced it. And I'm somebody who's very much like born from the internet. I think in the beginning of my career, I sort of blew up on Tumblr and on Bandcamp. And, like I was one of the very first artists to sort of clock that people were going to YouTube now to listen to music. So I started making tiny little visuals that weren't music videos, but they were just kind of like placeholders so that when people would listen to my music, they just had something to look at, even if it was like a GIF. So I've always, although I'm not like really that into the internet. On the other hand, I've always really like embraced ways to make it work for myself as a musician when technically it shouldn't. So you know, I love a challenge. You know, I do love a challenge, and so yeah, I've made a record over lockdown. I'm just sort of like finishing it now, and yeah, I'm really excited about it actually.
Well, we'll have to schedule another time to talk about the new record.
Yes.
But let's talk about Sad Day and this remarkable short film that you made. You worked with the director, and forgive me if I pronounce this name incorrectly, Hiro Murai. First of all, what attracted you to his work?
I think when I saw I mean, obviously he did like Atlanta, but when I saw the This Is America video, like I loved the way he portrayed something that was a really like serious issue within the community, but he was able to really capture Childish Gambino's personality. Like his personality was really shining through, and it was just shot so beautifully, and I just thought it was such a wonderful video. And yeah, I just was very drawn to him. And when I started doing martial arts, I thought to myself, yeah, I'd love to reach out to him and see if he'd be interested in helping me sort of bring martial arts in the way that like it's traditionally shot to like a more contemporary environment, and what would it look like if it was shot in London. And I had this idea for this sort of love story, and he really like elevated that and had so many wonderful ideas when we spoke on the phone. So I was like, yeah, 100%, this is going to be so much fun.
Well, let me ask you about that, because about the martial arts and the use of swords. If I understand, the name of that discipline is wushu. Am I right? Am I right about that? Yeah. So what first attracted you to that particular discipline?
Well, I was actually at a film festival, not for myself, and I was having actually like a really horrible time. I remember like I think I was at Cannes Film Festival, and like I couldn't get in anywhere. Like none of restaurants would let me in, my own hotel wouldn't let me in, and I was just having like a bit of a disaster of a trip. And I bumped into Chloe Zhao, and we ended up hanging out. She's an amazing female Chinese director, and we just made friends, and we both were a bit like, what are we doing here? This is crazy. And we would go for these long walks, and yeah, she was Chinese, and she said to me like, oh, you should look at wushu, like the way that you move, I think that you would really love it. And I was like, really? And she was like, yeah, trust me, like give it a go. So when I went back to LA, I started training in wushu, and Chloe would come down and watch my sessions, and I would send her videos, and she was so sweet and encouraging. And then, you know, I just love practicing things. Like to me, practicing is love. Like there's such like reverence, and there's such like a sacred energy around giving time to a practice. And I've always felt that way. Like, you know, obviously I did it in cellophane with pole dancing, and I was doing it around the same time with martial arts as well. And it just sort of, yeah, I get really into things. It kind of just like took over my life.
Well, certainly. I mean, you've been a dancer since you were very young, and to use somewhat of a songwriting analogy, how did wushu change storytelling for you?
That's a really beautiful question. I think that like as a movement artist, I was able to find a lot of grounding in wushu, and I was able to find a lot of danger. So through wushu, I started doing aerials and backflips and ring moves that I never would think that I would do, like as I've been moving for so long, you know, it's the type of thing that, well, if you don't learn it when you're a teenager, like why would you start learning it when you're an adult? But it gave me a real ambition to fly the same way that Paul did. You know, I think whilst I was making Magdalene, I think I just had this like desire to fly. And when I was on the pole, I was in the air and I was flying, and through wushu I started doing these like amazing flips and moving, and with the sword, and it just feels like, you know, the sword is like a paintbrush, and it felt like I was flying. So in that way, I feel that it allowed me to, I guess, tell a story as more of a movement artist rather than a dancer. Like, I don't think I'm a dancer anymore. I just think I like to move, and that was really liberating, and it's definitely affected the music I make, and it's affected the risks that I take. And you know, there's that line in Home with You where I say, I've never seen a hero like me in a sci-fi, and that's where it came from, because I was like training one day, looking at myself in the mirror with a sword, and I was like, you know, this is amazing. I have no business doing this. I'm from London. I'm like English, Spanish, and Jamaican, and yet I'm here with my Chinese wushu teacher, who, by the way, like didn't really speak that much English, but we had this beautiful way of like communicating, and he was teaching me about the culture and the moves, but we didn't really always understand each other. And I was like, wow, like it feels really exciting to be paying such like homage to an old tradition, you know?
Well, let's talk about that. You mentioned being the hero, and in the piece, you are in the film, you are absolutely the hero, which is not necessarily I think an image that you saw certainly in mainstream media maybe when you were growing up. Is it important for you to kind of model that hero for young people today?
No, I actually feel the opposite. I mean, I think it's really important for me to portray my vulnerability. I've always found very ostracized and intimidated by an image of not perfection, but just when something's so pristine and it's so perfect and there's no flaws or there's no vulnerability. I think that, especially when I've seen other female artists do that, although it's amazing and I think it's incredible and I respect it and I'm completely in awe of it, I think it's always made me like shy away from it a little bit, because I'm a very like vulnerable person in many ways. Like I find like my strength in my vulnerability, and so no, I kind of feel the opposite. Like I feel that for me it's important to portray my vulnerability through my movement and through my music and my videos, and portray like a different type of sensuality, you know, like my own brand. Like I just want to be myself. But yeah, that's why I said I've never seen a hero like me in a sci-fi, because like it's a different type of strength maybe. Yeah.
Well, you know, on the idea of vulnerability, I read something where you were talking about Magdalene, and you said, and I wrote this down, we're so lucky we're in an age where to feel right now can be a superpower. Well, I mean, by the way, it's a terrific quote. Do you think it's even more of a superpower given where we are, you know, currently, you know, pandemic and social justice issues and all these kinds of things, the idea of feeling?
Yeah, 100%. And it seems so obvious, but I think to be able to be introspective and look within oneself and not be pointing outwardly all of the time is a real superpower at the moment. And I think obviously, you know, it goes without saying, throughout COVID, there's been a lot of needed introspection. I think that's so important for us to grow. I mean, as humans, we're deeply flawed and deeply broken, and we have broken our world. Like, we've broken our world collectively. And I do think that the only way to get through it is to feel more and to correct ourselves and to learn and to look inwards and not always point and shout outwards. For everybody, I think it's deeply, deeply important. Yeah.
Well, let's go back to Magdalene, you know, for a minute. It was your first studio album in 5 years. And you know, I heard an artist once say, you don't necessarily finish an album; it's more like you abandon it. But you talking about Magdalene, you've described it as a pleasurable experience, and I'm wondering why.
I think I was just so grateful to have made something that I felt really proud of, and that was a real genuine exploration. The journey of Magdalene was really long. It felt like a pilgrimage. I actually ended the record being finished by making a pilgrimage to Glastonbury to sit on the ley lines of Mary Magdalene. I think it was St. Michael, and there's a secret Mary Magdalene chapel underneath these ruins. And I literally made a pilgrimage after the album to kind of thank Mary Magdalene for the inspiration and the strength and for the knowledge and for allowing me to like research her and in turn my womanhood in such depth. It really felt like a very big journey for me, beyond music or beyond making an album. It felt like something that I had to do to graduate almost into becoming an adult, if I can call myself that now. Yeah, it felt like something that I had to do to graduate into becoming an adult, and so it was pleasurable, it was painful, and it did take a long time, and it was difficult and frustrating sometimes and stubborn and very emotional, but for me, that's what life is about. I like to learn through my work because I work so much. I'm a Capricorn. I love working. So I need to be able to grow through it as well. And so therefore it has to be very genuine.
You've talked about, and I think you just kind of hinted at this, the importance of honesty in your songs. Tell me how, in your estimation, you've evolved as a songwriter.
That's interesting. I think that I just know myself better. Yeah, I just know myself better, and I feel more confident in my voice, and so I feel more confident to do less and more with my voice when required. I've learned in songwriting that the more simple things are just as important to say as the more complicated things. I think I'm less shy. I don't feel like I always need to be like shrouded, you know, like with smokes and mirrors and kind of like, I feel more confident to just stand on stage and sing with a piano. And it's weird because I started out singing opera when I was very young, and then I sang in jazz bands for many years throughout my teens. So I think that was something that I really came from. I came from standing on stage and singing with a beautiful piano. But when I became an artist, it kind of, I think because I'd had that beginning, I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I've been doing that the whole of my life. So I was like, I want all the most beautiful sounds all at once. You know, I want all the beauty all the time, all at once. And I think through Magdalene, I was able to find a lot of space again and able to fall back in love with instruments like piano, like guitar. Just to write a song on a guitar, that's cool. Just write a song on a guitar or a piano and be proud of that, you know? Like, it doesn't always have to be like a wizard synth.
Yeah. Well, and on that tip, I'm interested in how you work in the studio. Are you someone who will kind of experiment, with sounds and effects and production? Is that something you enjoy doing?
100%. Yeah. I mean, like, I feel like I'm probably very exhausting to my collaborators in the studio because I want to like try everything. I want every single option. And then I often will end up going back to like a very early version. But I love to experiment with sounds, and I'm not a traditional musician. Like, I don't play things particularly well. So like anything that's very like kinetic for me is really exciting. So anything with like knobs I can turn or sounds that I can make or things that I can like bash on, I feel like that's where my love of music lies, in just like making sounds and manipulating them in real time. I mean, computers are great and everything you can do. I use Ableton. Everything you can do on Ableton is amazing. But I also love twisting knobs and like pulling levers and kind of really
the tactile thing, being able to kind of feel it as you do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm big for buttons and lights. Give me buttons and lights. I'm like good to go. You produced the album with Nicholas Jar, and he removed himself from a number of the production credits because he freely acknowledged that you did most of the work. First of all, that's incredibly kind of selfless. But it also serves to highlight the challenges that particularly women have had over time with being recognized for their roles in production. How do you look at it?
I think that when I was younger and I had more fire and more energy, I think in my mind I used to believe that these things weren't true. That if you're a woman, you might get treated differently in the studio. I think I was kind of like a little bit in denial about it because I think I thought like to think about it would be to acknowledge it and therefore make it true. But as I got older, it is true, and it's really sad. Yeah, it is true, and it is really sad actually that sometimes I feel like as a woman, people do talk to you differently. Like, I can only give like little examples. Like, if you're like producing something or engineering something and you're a boy, if you make a silly mistake, like because you're tired or you've had a long session, like maybe you're trying to play something but like it's muted, do you know what I mean? And you'll be looking and you'll be like, oh, what is it? And then like, you'll feel, oh gosh, I muted everything, like silly me. It's not a big deal. People just give you that time. If you're a woman and that happens, it's kind of like, are you okay? Like, do you want me to do it for you? Are you okay there? Do you know what I mean? And it's like, and there's just like this like, oh gosh, like, and I've had it before. I have experienced it before, and it is difficult, and it has definitely made me like shy away from the computer because I've sometimes thought, oh, I'll just let like a boy do it. I have felt like that before. But, then you work with some people like Nicholas Jar, and Nicholas Jar, I could not have made that record without him. Like, do not get it twisted. Like, he did so much on the album, and he was so attentive and so generous with his time and with his talent. I mean, he's essentially like an angel. Like, he is incredible. But you meet some people and it just gives you so much confidence to be like, oh, I can do this. And like, I can be heard and people will listen to me and I can have ideas. And if those ideas go wrong, it's not because I'm bad at things or I'm not good at making music. It's because some ideas work and some ideas don't. So yeah, Nicholas Jar really allowed me to experiment a lot and find what it was, and I'm so grateful to him. It's true, we're still living very much in a man's world, and it is true, and I think I'm kind of at a I've always been at a point, and maybe this is wrong, but I just don't even like to talk about it. Like, I just want to do stuff, you know, like I just want to like do things. Like, I don't want to moan about it. Like, I have stopped working with people in the past because they've made me feel uncomfortable, and I have voiced that opinion gently and honestly afterwards, and then I just won't work with that person again. Like, that's cool as well, you know. Like, if people want to get like broy in the studio, like, they can go and do that in another session. Like, that's not See
you later. We're running down on time a little bit, and there are a couple of things I want to get to. Your live shows are unbelievably athletic. I mean, sword play, pole work, all kinds of physical dancing activity, not to mention singing. But I'm interested in, how does movement affect the writing of the songs? Are you at all considering how the songs will play in a live environment as you're writing them?
Not really, but obviously, like, I do feel a lot in my body, so I think kind of what rhythms I like. I'm a big like dancer in the studio, you know. Like, if I'm making music, I'll like jump up and like start moving around and get really excited. So obviously, you know, movement on a smaller scale at the time definitely does influence it. I think when I make music very freely, and then accidentally like a concept kind of starts coming together, and then I call it the seed. So I'll get like the seed of a project, which will be like 2 or 3 songs, and I'll be like, oh my god, like those 3 are best friends, or that is a cousin of that person. And then I think, what is that feeling, you know, like what is this feeling right there if I put those 3 songs together? Like, what does that mean? And then, you know, it doesn't really belong to me. The songs and the music and the production, it has its own personality. Like, it wants to be what it wants to be, and when you get it right, it's happy with you, and when you get it wrong, it's not, you know.
I like that. Last question. You won at the recent, or this year, the NME Awards, Best British Solo Act. And as I mentioned in the open, Cellophane, the video for Cellophane, received a Grammy nomination. What does that kind of recognition mean to you?
You know, it's honestly 2 things. On the one hand, you know, awards and people recognizing and saying well done, it doesn't rule my like want to do this. You know, I want to do this for different reasons other than winning awards. But I know that some artists, like, that's like such a big thing, like they want to win a certain award and that will mean that they've made it. I've never really had that. But then at the same time, there's like an 8-year-old girl inside of me who's like the only black girl in my village, living in the middle of nowhere in England, who all the odds were against me to be able to, you know, get out of that situation, to move to London, to then work hard and be able to find myself in London and find my creative family and make music that, you know, some people want to listen to. That 8-year-old, you know, loves it. So it's kind of like a double thing. I like to try and keep it in perspective. Like when somebody says something that they don't like your work, you know, like just keep that in perspective. If someone's like, oh my gosh, you're the best ever in the whole world, like keep that in perspective as well. I was a dance competition kid when I was young, and my mum always taught me, like, because you do your solo dance, and then afterwards you'll have like all of the children like line up like 1 to 20 or however many people were in the category. Say if you're like number 8, and my mum said, like, if they call your name, have the same grace as if they don't call your name, you know. So it's like the same energy. And I think because I was such a dance competition kid when I was young, I think I definitely I hold that kind of like grace in my heart. But at the same time, I mean, how incredible, like, you know, NME, that's sick, you know, for them to recognize me in like a country, you know, where I'm from. Yeah, it's amazing. It's beautiful. What an honor, and what an honor to be, you know, to have like my name batted around with so many like talented artists. It's a wonderful like generation for talent. So like, what an honor to be in the same sort of like realm of other people that I admire.
Well, we certainly admire the work that you do. And now that you've tipped us off to this new album, we'll be waiting to hear that. But for now, FKA Twigs, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
Bye. Take care.